Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vulnerability Hangover podcast. I'm your host, Nikki. I'm thrilled to bring you an extraordinary guest on today's podcast episode. Joining us is Bryston, a Marine veteran whose remarkable journey took an unexpected turn towards healing and spirituality through the transformative power of psilocybin. In this episode, Bryston opens up about his first mushroom journey experience, deeply exploring how this unique encounter reshaped his perspective on life. His story is not just about the profound impact of psychedelics, but it is also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the various paths one can take towards self-discovery. Bryston's insights are nothing short of brilliant. His depth of understanding and wisdom he has gained through this experience has made him an exceptional guest, and I'm eager to delve into the lessons he has to share. As the host of this podcast, I believe in the power of authentic conversations, and Bryston's journey is a testament to the strength found in vulnerability. So buckle up for a thought-provoking and enlightening episode as we explore the intersections of healing, spirituality, and personal growth with the incredibly insightful and intelligent Bryston. His story will resonate with you, giving you a renewed understanding and inspiration. Let's delve into this compelling conversation together. Welcome back to the Vulnerability Hangover podcast. I'm your host, Nikki, and today I have a very special guest.
My name is Bryston, Bryston Livesay. I was in the United States Marine Corps for 4 years, and I was raised by military parents in a very strict, conservative Christian background. And when I got out of the Marine Corps, I did 7 grams of mushrooms that completely wired my brain, and I'm just diving right in on that. I did it very intentionally. I set the set and setting, and I had a safe space with people that I loved who loved me. And for the next 7 hours, I had the most life altering experience I've ever had. And that's me just kind of hooking the audience in really quick, because while I may have said that really funny or facetiously, I take it very seriously. And I do credit that to being the actual turnaround in my life. Yes, the Marine Corps helped me out a lot. It helped me really hone in a lot of my divine masculine skills, a lot of my getting things done, putting in hard work, and understanding that of solid work ethic is a foundation for the rest of your life in any and everything you do. So good on that, great for that. But it was very, I would say, regressive on an emotional intelligence scale. I think many Marines can attest to that. And it really just depends on your individual experience. I've met Marines who had the most one in a million type of experiences in the Marine Corps, where they got sent everywhere, they got per diem, they never had to see combat, things like that. I'm not talking to that guy. No offense. I think that everybody can value from or derive value and benefit from the healing powers of psilocybin, which is the active and psychoactive ingredient in magic mushrooms. However, I see it not as a party thing. I see it as a very spiritual thing. It is, in fact, the thing that stopped me from taking my own life. So, this is one of the biggest messages I have in this life to give to other veterans, especially the Marines, which has the highest rate of suicide out of all the branches. And that's not me being like, oh, the Marines have it tougher. Well, we do. We really struggle from the mental health aspect, because in the Marine Corps, it's not, they'll tell you, yeah, go seek help if you need it. It's not okay. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Command will blacklist you. You won't be able to operate your weapon. You won't be deployable if you're not able to operate your weapon. And those things for Marines are all very big, high value aspects of their life. As a warrior, you never want to have the ability to be in war taken from you, which is a hard concept for people to understand. So coming back from that, getting out of that military mindset, ready to go to war at all time, constantly thinking about protecting myself at any moment, staying extremely vigilant. Imagine what can I use as a weapon nearby? Who can I trust to have my back if something pops off? And that's just the mentality that you have. So coming down and decompressing from that actually takes a long time. And I would say that mushrooms definitely helped me, but it took years of implementing the lessons that I learned from that one trip, that one psychedelic experience, with magic mushrooms on 7 grams, which is quite a bit. That's what we call a heroic dose, right?
Yeah.
I had a complete outer body experience. The way that I went into it was very specific. So, with all that, I can wrap into the actual story of it all. But that's kind of why I take a lot of value out of this. And I think that everybody needs to hear what I experienced and what other people have experienced so that we can recognize this more as a healing tool for your soul, which is really what's going to control your mind. If you're not good, if you can't even look at yourself in the mirror, you can't even see where you're going wrong, the things that you're doing to your own self or not doing for your own self, which was most of the problem for me at this point in time before I had done that. I got out of the Marine Corps and I was extremely depressed. I had a very serious relationship that I had asked her to marry me. It was very toxic. And I had a very hard time letting go of that. A very, very hard time letting go of that. And then I got out of the Marine Corps about around the same time that her and I had imploded, right? And I just had the hardest time because nothing in my life had gone the way that I had wanted it to my entire life. I was going to be in life, a lifer, right? In the Marine Corps is what we call it. And I was going to retire. I wanted to end as a sergeant major. I wanted to go to the drill field. I wanted to go on more deployments. But ultimately, I ended up getting out for kind of personal reasons. I had a lot of things implode in my own family as well. And at the end of the day, I had to choose my mental sanity over the way that I saw the Marine Corps was going.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it for what it gave me, which are the best friends in my entire life. It was the dad that I never had and I never wanted, but I always needed, right?
Yeah.
The really strict dad who's going to beat my butt for not doing the right thing, which I'm not advocating for child abuse, but whip my butt into shape. Hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. Get this done, do things the right way, and do it for no one but yourself. And honoring that you have integrity and honor within your own self. Great. And then turn around, there's that double-edged sword of the Marine Corps where, in order to get people to do things a certain way, it's very derogatory in the way that you're spoken to. That doesn't end at boot camp. You get into the fleet and you think it's going to end, and they're like, "Oh, who are you? You haven't done anything yet. You haven't even deployed. You're still a boot. I'm going to talk to you and treat you like a piece of crap." And then over time, you prove yourself and you get treated a little better, but ultimately, you still deal with things like mass punishment. You develop this sense of need to control everyone around you so that mass punishment happens less often. And when it doesn't work, you get extremely irate, which then mentally trains you when you get out to kind of assume the responsibility of other people's both emotional needs and just life needs. For me, I ended up taking on the financial obligations of one of my parents when I shouldn't have, and help my mom's healing journey after her divorce, but that really put a lot of dampening on my own healing journey. I couldn't see that. I was trying too much and giving too much to everyone else, spreading myself super thin, and I didn't even recognize it. I wasn't eating on regular time intervals, which is actually pretty important for your mental health. I wasn't staying hydrated, which is an obvious importance for your mental health. I was very demotivated to even human like at all. I could put it
Mm-hmm.
that way. It's probably one of the most depressed points in my entire life. I spent days, if I wasn't working, I worked as a diesel mechanic when I got out. That's what I did when I was in the Corps. And I would spend my entire weekends, which were 3 and 4 day weekends because I worked a compressed schedule, just staring at the ceiling. Where did I go wrong? What could I have done differently? What would have made her stay? What would have made me enjoy the Marine Corps more? Just putting it all on me in a very negative way without actually putting it in a way that was conducive towards me learning and healing past it. I just didn't have that tool. My parents were in the military as well, so they had an emotional toolbox that was like this big, um, and you could fit like one Crayola crayon in there. So, I love them very much. They've come a very far way on their own, so I don't want to devalue their healing process. But at this point, I felt as if I had no ability to control my own emotions. My emotions definitely controlled me. I was super atheist. I didn't believe that any kind of benevolent God like Yahweh in the Bible, right? Or Jesus, Yeshua in the Bible, um, would have allowed to happen the things that I was privileged to seeing while I was in the Marine Corps. And 9 times out of 10, it wasn't actually anything that the enemy did. It was what I saw my own brothers and sisters do to each other and to me. And that's really what got me to get out. The military is very different than it was when my parents were in, the things that I witnessed that I thought I would go through. And while I value the communication tool that is a cell phone, It really it stopped that unit cohesiveness and family feeling from really getting fully fledged, because you always had contact with your old friends, you always had contact with your family back home. And I fell prey to that. I didn't realize that. And instead of focusing on becoming a cohesive unit with the people around us, we ended up just being kind of stuck on our phones. And it was something that I didn't even realize until years later, but that was a part of the problem. That I think that's why it was so easy for us to be so derogatory towards each other and never really follow that up with something that was like good and foundational for someone to kind of actually get over the crap that you're trying to help them get over by yelling at them in a derogatory manner. It's a very backwards way of doing things. But I didn't realize that again until longer after having consumed psilocybin. So I'm so tired of staring at the ceiling. And I wake up one morning and it's like my first day off. And I think to myself, this is the last day on this planet. I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. I have my two dogs in between me. And I'm thinking, you'll be better off. You can help take care of mom. She'll take care of you. She won't go with you guys here. So she'll be set and she'll be able to heal. I was really going deep into like, how can I set my family up to be fine without me so that I can leave? Because I was that tired. I was done. I had no spiritual faith. I was like, we literally live to pay our bills and then we die. And I'm supposed to just have a wife and create more kids to pay more bills so they can just live to pay bills and die. Like my parents did that to me. I don't want to do that to them. I don't want to play anymore. I don't like this game. Is kind of how I felt. It was a very dark and low place in my life. I'm not advocating for that at all. So, at least at this point in my life. However, the moment I had that thought, this is it, this is the last day, you guys are better off without me. TV turns to, and I'm watching Fox News, right? I'm living in Utah at this point, which is what I would like to call and did call at the time the reddest state in the West. All right. So, seeing something like this on TV is going to catch your attention no matter what you're thinking, but just like the synchronicity of it all for me really just screamed. And I was like, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. On Fox News, the news anchor woman in the reddest state in the West, she goes, the FDA just approved a 12-year peer review on the benefits of psilocybin for veterans with PTSD, anxiety, and depression. And I was like, you're screaming at me. Obviously, she's not, but like my body, I literally, everything in me was like, you need to go research this right now.
Yeah, I have chills.
The only thing I ever knew about mushrooms was what my cousin Zach had told me. And this guy, I love him to death, but he's like the party cousin. Okay. So he did it the wrong way and he had a horrible trip and he told me about it. And I was like, I'm never touching that crap.
Mhm.
Wow. That's terrifying. So I was like, if it's on Fox News in the reddest state in the West, I got to look at this. I got to look this up. I spent the next entire day researching magic mushrooms in pre-Christian societies. And I came to found that on every single continent on this planet, whether it was magic mushrooms or ayahuasca or iboga or tree frog, like there's so many different psychedelic things that you can do on this planet that are natural and they're here and you don't have to put a single chemical into it, that creator, God, source, universe, whatever word you have for your higher power, put here as healing tools for us. I wholly believe that with my entire being. So when I found that out, at this point in time, I was like, seems hokey. No. Uh, every country on the planet doesn't confirm it enough for me. I'm going to have to do this for myself. In Norse mythology, I can't remember the character's name, but there was a medicine man, essentially, in each tribe that would go and collect magic mushrooms during the winter solstice, that he would then give magic mushrooms to the tribe and they would all consume together to celebrate the return of the sun, the return of light to the world, the end of the dark times, and happiness and new life being formed from the rays that will hit the ground and make the grass grow, things like that. So they were really celebrating the dawn of the new year, the new earth that was coming to them with new growth. And they saw that within themselves because the Norse pagans did not see themselves as separate from nature. They knew that humans go in cycles with the sun and the moon and the seasons. If we didn't, we wouldn't be able to live on this planet. So that's really what they saw was the beginning of new times for them, and like within themselves and externally. So internally and externally. And that's really where the entire concept of Santa Claus actually comes from, because the medicine man would wear a red hat with white spots on it and a red suit so that berserkers would know that he wasn't a warrior. He's just there. He's a medicine man. Don't kill him. And that was their code. So berserkers in those times were like basically what we would call a mercenary, like a hired gun to go and kill someone's opponent from another tribe or something. So that's really where the very root of Santa kind of comes from, and having gifts in a gift bag. It's from magic mushrooms, which is something that I kind of find hilarious and cool at the same time. So when I found that out, I was like, man, if they were doing that as a tribe, and like I'm talking like kids and adults of all ages, then what is it to this? And so I contacted one of my friends and I said, hey, you've been trying to get me to do mushrooms for years now. I'm finally ready. And she goes, shut the fuck up. I just picked some up. And I was like, what are you doing tonight? And she was like, I'm coming over to your house. And I was like, yeah, you are. So her and her boyfriend came over. And then weirdly enough, we've actually stayed friends. We kind of went through some trauma together as kids. She's married now. She has her own kids, but we're still kind of friends. My first love was there. And we were just friends at this time. But she was someone that I knew had my best interest in mind. So it was those three. And then it was actually, I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps. So I was actually living with my mom. And so she was there and she actually took a little bit with us, which was kind of nice. But at this point, the way that I could kind of describe my heart was that it was just a dead rock, like a dead planet kind of floating inside my chest. I didn't really feel anything. Nothing made me excited anymore. Nothing made me sad. Nothing made me happy. I didn't care about the things that I once enjoyed doing. I even stopped going to the gym. And for anyone who's listening that might know me, knows like that's probably the number one sign for me. If I'm not doing good, and it's so bad that I'm not in the gym, be worried. You need to be worried about me at that point. I don't think I'll ever get to that point again. Honestly, I get a little nutty without the gym. I love it a lot. But that's where I was. I had stopped taking care of my body. I wasn't eating right. I was drinking all the time, and I was hanging out with people who only wanted to drink. And then, so those friends come over, and I ingested it in tea. So that's one of the most potent ways that you can ingest this, right? The way that I ended up getting 7 grams wasn't because we had planned that. I literally had the intention and I said it in my mind before I consumed anything. I said, show me the purpose of being here, because if not, I'm out. I don't want to be here anymore. This is meaningless to me. This is abhorrent. I don't like humanity. A very, very negative place in my mind. And I just felt like I didn't belong at all. And I had felt my entire life that I didn't belong here on this planet, which is, I don't really know where that derives from. And it's a hard thing to explain to people who can't conceptualize that. But I felt like limited and super contained is all I can say.
Sure.
And so I said, whoever's up there, if you're real, God or whoever, show me that it's worth it. Show me the purpose of being here. And so I go outside and things are starting to get a little trippy after, oh, right. Sorry, I skipped that part. So I said that, I put that intention out there. And I said, show me the purpose of my being here. What is the purpose for my life? What am I meant to do? What is the point of me being here? What is the point of me suffering through all these things? And I kind of hit the surface. I had a pretty tumultuous childhood. I had a pretty tumultuous time in the Marine Corps, and I had a pretty horrible time with my ex-fiance. Obviously, it was great until it was bad, but I had a lot of bad experiences, and I just didn't understand what was all contributing to that. Obviously, I made a lot of decisions to get me to those points, but I put that intention out there. I ingested the first 3.5 grams of psilocybin, and then my friend's boyfriend took 1 or 2 sips of the tea that he had, which had the same dose as mine. He's like, you know what? I don't really want to do this because I want to be able to drive us home tonight, babe. She was like, oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. And he was like, I'm going to be too tired if I do this, and then I'm going to end up sleeping here, and you've got to be somewhere tomorrow. So he was like, here, do you want the rest of mine? And she was like, no, this is his first time. Don't do that to him. And I was like, yes. And I don't really know what came over me in that point. This was like my Hail Mary. This was either this works or I'm done for me. I took it very seriously. I was like, either this helps me rewire my brain and figure out what's going on with me and all of my bullshit, or I am no longer on this plane. I'm done. I'm fed up. So I was like, yes. And she was like, are you sure? I was like, I am fucking positive, dude. Like, this has to work. And I didn't tell any of them why I wanted to do that or what was going on in my head. I was taught in the Marine Corps and throughout my life, my parents allowed two emotions, which were happiness and anger. And if you were angry, you weren't allowed to be angry at the parents. It had better be with something else. I wasn't really allowed to kind of express and feel through those emotions as a kid. So I didn't know how to do that as an adult. And I wasn't willing or able to really even convey, if I wanted to share, what was going on with me. So I kept it all to myself. And I just told them, let's do these mushrooms. I'm trying to rewire my brain after being in the Marine Corps. And they were like, all right, let's do it. So the first thing that happens, and I mean like maybe 15 minutes, it's like things are starting. We go outside and I look at the sky and it looks pixelated like my cell phone. And I was like, is this real? Do I live in a place that's real? And then I looked at the bugs and they looked mechanical. And I looked at my dogs. I was like, are my dogs real? And they looked real. So I was like, okay. So some things are real, some things are fake. And I'm just like, I'm way too left brain logic and not right brain chaos. So this is my left brain trying to hold on to control as I'm slipping into this very chaotic psychological experience where you just really, the best way to do is just surrender, just let go and let it show you what you need to be shown. Cause that's what I had asked for. I said, show me the reason of being here. So I go inside and I'm like, all right, that's weird. I'm going to go back inside. And I opened a couple of self-help books that I had set to the side to try and read with this idea that if I read it while on mushrooms, it will help rewire my brain faster. I opened the book and all of the letters like just disbanded and then dripped off of the page like water. And I was like, well, can't do that. And just went on to the next thing. Like I was looking at the letters on the floor and I was like, okay, so I'm not meant to do this. And I just accepted that and I went on. So I go upstairs and I have no idea how long this time is actually taking, by the way. But I go upstairs and by the time I'm upstairs, and that was in the basement. I get upstairs and I had vaulted ceilings in my house at the time. And we lived in kind of the further out country area where you could see the mountains. But it was kind of like a further out suburb, if you will. So I just, whenever I'm intoxicated at all, I do this thing that I call the starfish and done. Like this is the signal that Bryston's done for the night. He can't drive, probably needs to go to bed soon. Like he's done. I just throw my arms out to the side like the Vitruvian man and I fall straight back. Don't even try to catch myself or anything, just right onto the ground. Usually, and I don't get blackout drunk anymore, but when I did in the Marine Corps, I would get told that was what I did. So now I know. And then I did that while on psilocybin, but I was fully aware of everything. I was just like, wee, fell back. And then I locked my eyes onto a star because it was dark outside already. And when I locked eyes onto that star through my vaulted ceiling window, as I'm starfished on the ground, I left my body and it just gone. And I was like, I felt myself moving like an upward movement. And I like tried to look down and all I could see was like this golden amber tube of light that I was just kind of like floating up in. And I tried to look down and look at my body and I was like, I don't have a body. I'm just, how am I floating if I don't have a body? Again, left brain is like, I don't understand. So then the floating sensation kind of stops and I'm like in the middle of space, like above the Milky Way galaxy. And I'm looking down from the exact point. I don't know how I know this. I just know that I came from that exact point and that's where Earth is and that's where my house is and that's where I'm from in this life. But I'm completely detached from it at this moment. I have no emotional ties. I'm like, oh, well, that was easy. That's all I had to do to get out of there. I'm looking around. I'm like, what is out here? I called it like my spirit guide or the trip guide or whatever. I have no real word for this outside of my higher self. And the question I got asked was, do you want to go back? And I looked over to my left and I saw a blue galaxy that was like spiraled like ours, I didn't know this at the time, but I went back and looked because this was so surreal for me. This was so real for me. I can't explain it at all. It was so real and linear, and it didn't, it had purpose to it. It was so, it felt more real than reality did to me at that time. I look over and that blue spiral galaxy, I was like, I don't know what that is, but I want to go over there. Well, I didn't go over there. At that point, I was just back in that golden amber tube of light, and I just started floating kind of up more. And I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden, I got to this realm or dimension or place. I don't really have a word for it. It had no corners. It was all just this golden amber flowing, like ethereal, like a river of light. If I did have a body in that moment, I could slice through it and it would just and keep going. That's the best way I can explain what that looked like. And then I just had in that dimension felt so much love that I had not ever in my life experienced that level of love. And if I did, it was when I was a kid and I was a lot younger, and that emotion was more accessible to me. I felt like in Jim Carrey's The Grinch. I don't know if you've seen it. That scene where his heart is growing 3 sizes too big. That's the only thing I can compare this to. I was like, without words. I was just like writhing in the pain of accepting love. It is, I don't know how to explain that any other way. And it wasn't a bad pain. It was just like, as if that muscle had atrophied and it was coming back to life. And it was overwhelming, the abundance of love. Like I couldn't speak. And then all of a sudden, I just saw these kind of orbs, and I don't really know how many. It was like 6 or 9. There was a lot of orbs that kind of came to me, and I just recognized and knew in that moment that they were other souls. And I'm flabbergasted. I have no words. I'm just like still trying to accept all this love that's just everywhere. And they're like, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here yet." And I'm like, "What?" And they're that's all I could think was what? And they're like, "You're not supposed to be here yet. You have a mission to complete. You're not done." And I was like, "A mission? What mission?" They said, "You already know." And I was like, "What?" And because I don't know anything esoteric at this point, I don't know anything. I just know the Bible at this point. So I don't even know about really like Ezekiel's experience that well. And I said, "What?" And they go, "We love you and we're always with you, but you have to go back. You have a mission to complete." And I was back in my body, and I had felt my body leave through the center of my forehead. And I sat there and I was like trying to pinch at my forehead and throw my consciousness back out into the cosmos because I was like, "No, I have more questions. What do you mean I have a mission? What do you?" And so throughout the rest of that trip, I kind of just got these kind of, the only way I can really put it is downloads, kind of like your friend did, is because it's not like I clicked a button. It's not like I opted in. It was just like immediate knowledge. Oh, okay. I accept that as truth. Thank you. I will adjust my course moving forward. And those truths were, hey, you're not eating anymore, which means that I can't produce the happy chemical in your brain because you're not eating. You're not hydrating. So you're increasing the stress on your cellular level, which is going to, again, lead to you being stressy and depressy. You're not working out anymore. You're not going out. You're not trying to understand why you feel the way that you feel. And until I had this kind of weird vision of like me, like staring at myself in the mirror, like I had to face myself, like face yourself and accept it all before you can move forward. You don't have to like every bit of it. You don't have to agree with it all. And you can change things you don't like, but you have to look at it to know what it is that you don't like. And I just had this like flash of like my dog in my body and then me being out of body. And I came to accept that or I wouldn't say accept, the way that I view my body and the perspective that I have on my body is it's just like a pet. I am not my body. My consciousness leaves this body when I die. This body will dematerialize and it will be consumed back into the soil of the earth and it will go back to Mother Gaia. But my consciousness is going to go somewhere else. My consciousness is going to leave. It's going to go to whatever dimension I just was probably at in that trip, I hope, at least for a little while, get some stamina before I come back to this dense plane. And I recognize that if you're not taking care of your pet, you're not creating a good habitat for your consciousness. Because this is my ecosystem for my consciousness. This is my tool to interface with the reality that my consciousness is in right now. And if I don't have the right tool for the job, of course I'm going to have a lot of pain and struggle with that. And it's going to be in a very visceral way because with this tool, you feel it all. It's not the wrench that you put on the pipe and you crank on. It's small method of changing habits and creating new habits so that this pet, this body, can just run efficiently so that my consciousness can begin to conceptualize anything beneficial to put into this world to leave as my mark as Bryston, as this incarnation, this experience, this ego that I have. And I would not have gotten anywhere. I would not have, let's rephrase that. If I had gone the traditional psychotherapy route, I would probably have been put on SSRIs for antidepression and anxiety. And I probably would have been forced to go to therapy for years. If I had actually told a counselor the things that were going on in my head at that time, I may have even been put into a psychological institution to have cognitive behavioral therapy while on SSRIs in that facility, which really doesn't help you learn how to interface with the world without any medication. So for me, I've seen so many veterans, and my mom being one of them, be just put on pills. Hey, this hurts. Oh, here's a pill. Oh, here's this. Oh, here's this diagnosis. I talked to you for 30 seconds. You've lived 40 something years of life. You need a back surgery. She's got metal in her back. That's my mom. She's got metal in her back. She was taking several different pills to help her sleep, to help her manage pain, and it got to the point where I thought she had Alzheimer's. And I literally freaked out. I was like, I have had this conversation with you 6 times this week and 3 times today alone. Write it down if you can't remember things. Right? She's like, well, I don't remember that I'm not remembering these conversations. I was like, that's the problem, and it's the medication that you're on. So I was able to, after my trip, recognize that, get her off of those, and get her to get onto medical marijuana, which is, in my opinion, completely saved her life. She's a very different person now. She also has done mushrooms, and she's done trips since that trip, and she herself has gone on her own spiritual journey. And while we may have had a tumultuous past, and that is part of the story that I have, if you will, I do recognize that she is becoming a new person and she is trying to be better. And she has come along in a very far way that I have witnessed in my entire life. So if she can do it, I can. And I have been doing it. She tells me often that the only reason she really went down this path is because I did, which is a good thing to hear. And it also kind of adds to not knowing your purpose while you're living it, which was something that mushrooms kind of gave me as well. I've helped many different people by just being willing to sit with them while they do mushrooms and just kind of helping people understand different perspectives so that they can interface with life better, because I've been able to develop different perspectives that help me move forward in a much more fluid and healthy way, and a way that is conducive toward me being the best version of myself and living up to my higher self's standard for what I'm meant to do in this life, which I didn't know it at the time, but I have a pretty large goal, and it is bigger than me and my life. And whether anybody, I don't care to be recognized and known throughout the eons. If all of the people who knew me in this lifetime die and no one knows my name once they're all in the ground, fine. So long as I planted seeds that grew to be trees to provide shade for the people that came after me, for the family that comes after me, for just the betterment of humanity in general, I have big dreams, which is why I'm so driven. That's why I have multiple. It's why I'm very careful with the things that I spend time on, because that gave me purpose. That experience opened the door for me to begin to be introspective, to look at myself and see the uglier parts of myself, to fix and correct those. And I do say fix. No, I wasn't broken, but those were habits that I viewed to break my psyche. So I fixed those habits, and just upholding that standard and being honest with myself. I'm not going to sit here and tell people that I've been perfect every day since. I have not. I am still a fallible person. I have many ways that I can improve, and oftentimes growth is a spiral for any different habit or any different thing that you're trying to improve on. And there sometimes you regress back down that spiral and you have to go back up. And you know what? I'm not immune to that. Just because I've had these realizations doesn't mean that I'm still not working on the implementation of those lessons. They're not easy things to just do and rewire your brain. And I value that I have this pressure on myself, this desire to be better, this desire to earn money so that I can be my own capital fund individual for the things that I want to accomplish in life, because I'm going to run up against old industry that don't want change for very specific reasons. And the things that I want to change are the education system and the agriculture system, which brings me back to, hey, you're not eating right, you're not hydrating, and you also have a mental diet. I didn't even realize this until I did mushrooms. The things that I was choosing to consume, which was like all war movies, comedies, and deep satire comedies, not like things you would watch with family, very derogatory things. Not gonna lie, porn, right? Porn's not good for you, dude. It's not. It's just not. You will get addicted. So that was a part of the mental diet that I was consuming that wasn't good for me or my soul. And then just not reading and not listening to podcasts and not doing what I could to enrich my brain, which I think a lot of adults stop doing after high school. And you come to this point where you either make the decision to return to learning on your own accord or you don't. And then you remain stagnant at that level. Whether you realize that you've made that choice or not, you came to this planet, you incarnated in this life, you're meant to learn. It doesn't end in school, and it shouldn't end in school, because I'm sorry, guys, but 90% of the stuff that they taught us was all crap. It was all bull, especially history. History was written by the victor of the wars and not with both sides' truths in mind, if you will. And there's always three sides to the truth, right? There's a perspective of either foe and then the truth of what really happened. However, if we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. And I do think that is by design. I think that there has been a very big effort at dumbing down this nation. And I'm not a nationalist. Yes, I was in the Marine Corps. If I had to describe my own, not to get super political, but political beliefs in relation to the country, I would describe myself as libertarian or independent. Something that's missing from society globally, not just our country. We are very disconnected, but we have the ability to be the most connected right now than we ever have. You are in Portland, Oregon right now. I am just north of Salt Lake City, right? We're talking instantaneously right now from two different time zones. And we are using that ability to speak about healing opportunities, how to be more vulnerable, which is, for me, mushrooms, I wouldn't be vulnerable at all. I wouldn't be talking to you about any kind of adverse experience that I had. I would just be like keeping it light and making jokes and going about my day, which doesn't provide a lot of value to anybody. And that's kind of what we're doing on the internet right now. We're just keeping it light. We're making a lot of jokes. We've got microwave memes everywhere. And while, yes, I like memes, don't get me wrong, I think they're really funny and they're a great new communicative tool to express human emotion. I do think that we would do well to go internal as an entire society. Everyone talks about wanting to change the world. You have to do that internally before you can do it externally. And that's what the pagans that came before us, before Christianity, knew. And that's what the early Christians actually knew. I'll kind of end that note there. So, in doing magic mushrooms and finding out, man, these pagans kind of knew something, man. Like this really helped, and it's continuing to help me, and I still do it about once a year, every 6 months. as an ego kill and as to check in with my higher self and be like, hey, where can I be better? What haven't I improved on? What have I improved on? Yada. After I found out, I was like, man, these guys, they weren't savages like I was taught. They weren't dumb savages with like Iron Age tools. They had a whole medicine system. They had medicine men, medicine women, and that's every continent. So if magic mushrooms are good, well, what else is out there? So I start researching again. I look into ayahuasca, I look into the tree frog and all those things. And what I really did was looked at the myths of these ancient religions that, like Norse mythology, Mayan and Incan and Aztec and Egyptian mythology and Greek and Roman mythology. And I had some roots in learning about Percy Jackson, or when I was a kid, I read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. So I developed that interest in ancient mythologies back then, but mostly for Greek and Roman. So I know that very well. And then after doing mushrooms, I really delved heavily into Norse and Egyptian, and then finding out about the South American and I don't want to say Mexican, but the ancient tribes and peoples of Mexico, their mythologies as well. So when I learned that everyone's kind of talking about the same thing, but with different characters and different like animals, they all essentially have the same moral, like morality. Like you shouldn't kill people. Child sacrifice, probably not a good thing for like anyone. And for the Aztecs, sacrifice and giving blood back to Mother Earth is what kept their society strong and happy. And then that didn't work, obviously, because we know that they didn't survive into this time, unfortunately, at least not in the way that they did then. And so that's just one example of the difference in thought process and how we're able to look back now and be like, oh, I can see how they thought this one thing. They knew that they came from the earth. So they thought that if they spilled their blood and gave it back to the earth would be good to them and give them prosperity and value because they understood in order to take, you have to be willing to give. But they kind of took that to a very bad level in a way that really detrimented their ability to survive later on in life when those conquistadors ended up coming and plague came and then war came. Numbers matter when those things happen. And due to them kind of killing their own selves in mass, they ended up not being prosperous. But so that's just one way that you can see that while they may have believed certain things, it didn't always work out in their favor. And same thing for us here. I grew up believing in Yahweh, in Yeshua, in the Abrahamic religion of Christianity, and it didn't serve me at all. It didn't serve me at all. If anything, it made me very judgmental. It made me hate anybody who didn't live up to God's word, including myself. And I had a sibling who was bisexual, and she came out to my dad or my stepdad, and my stepdad had confided in the preacher. And the preacher that next Sunday decided that the answer to this was talking about how she was going to burn in hell and fire and brimstone for the rest of her life, and not specifically her. Like he wasn't saying her name, but he brought up Leviticus. He brought up every single thing that he could possibly bring up, and I watched my older sister crumble down and cry and bawl crocodile tears in the middle of the church. And she never went to church again. And then her younger sister and my older sister, I was the youngest, but these are my step siblings. Her younger sister ended up being bisexual too and didn't go to the church for that as well. And, I grew up with one of my closest friends ended up transitioning. So I see all these things and I'm being taught not to love these people, but I've loved them in my entire life. They've never done me or anyone wrong. They're really good people. They go out of their way to give and show love and support to the people around them. Why should I hate them? And if they really feel that way, well, then didn't God make them that way? And if God doesn't have anything, like he can't make mistakes, then why is that a mistake? And then there's the argument of free will, which kind of brings me to how I believe in God now. Because of doing mushrooms and studying all these things, if you really look into history and see that there are key players in history that changed the course of humanity forever. Now, whether Jesus existed or he was Yeshua or Jesus or whatever his name was, whatever, if he was a real person at all or if he was a fable made in those times. And I'm not advocating for either, okay? I'm just playing the devil's advocate here, if you will. Whoever that person was, he changed the face of the world by just being a messenger of living with love and gratitude in your life. Jesus, if you really study his life, was preaching about a lifestyle and not a religion. And there's more that goes into that. But Jesus came from the Essene tribe, and the Essene Christians are known for having consumed magic mushrooms, which enabled them to know that they were going to bring in the new Messiah. And his mom, Mary, ended up bringing in the Messiah, and she knew her entire life because she was born into that Essene tribe. She was raised to believe that's what she was going to do with her life. And she raised her son to know and believe that he was the Messiah. And he actually disappears in the Bible from age 13 to 30, and no one knows where he goes. And that's up for debate. There's physical evidence to show that he was in the Hindu temples and studying with monks and learning how to do all those esoteric things. And then he comes back. He walks on water and he heals with wine. However, he's able to do all these very metaphysical things and transfer energy from one point to another. And he's just talking about living with love and empathy for other people. And really, before that time, you don't see that a lot in humanity. You don't see a lot of empathy for other people. And we always say, oh, well, that's so barbaric. That's just where they were at that time. That's just how things were. No, that was our conscious development at that time. We didn't have the ability to understand that while, yes, I am in this body that is Bryston, this ego that is Bryston, I am also in this body and ego that is Nikki. And Nikki is in Portland. And I have no control over her at all from this ego's standpoint. However, we all come from the same point of energy in space. And we all call it God or source or creator. That's my personal belief. And if we are all really just experiencing separation with the idea of understanding and gaining more information to report back with at the end of this, then all these wars, all these arguments, all these things, you just start to see it as an unhealed part of your soul. They have parts of them that are unhealed that they need to work on. And so do you, but it shouldn't cause for you to completely disregard the fact that you are the same being experiencing separation. And the whole idea of this is love.
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal belief. Everything that I've studied kind of led me to that point. And I view most of the ancient texts, including the Bible, to be more about mentality and how the mind works and psychological aspects of humanity than actual taking it literally. For example, in the Norse sagas, right, you have the world serpent. The world serpent is born as a regular sized snake, but he lives in the ocean, right? And the tale, the nitty gritty of it all is that once he becomes long enough to put his tail in his mouth, that is the sign that it is the end of times. That's when the reset is going to happen. So really, that serpent was a way to describe a long period of time through which humanity would have a very stable planetary experience, if you will, less meteor showers affecting the planet, less solar anything kind of getting in the way of us living in a peaceful Earth, right? And then there's ancient cataclysm that happens, right? That it's kind of a reset. And that's really what the world serpent kind of in that fable of the world serpent is trying to express because they say, oh, well, it takes thousands and thousands of years for Jorgenmunder, the serpent, to grow and be able to put his tail in his mouth. And that was really just a storytelling kind of way of explaining a long period in human history, which is something that actually isn't just significant to the Norse. That's in several places in the world. And the Greeks, I believe, called it the Ouroboros. And a lot of people to this day have a tattoo of a serpent eating its tail. And whether they know it or not, it's a symbol of Ragnarok. But because of the nature of that myth, Ragnarok is the end times. But the Norse also understood that just the end times for them didn't mean the end of the entire world, the end of humanity. It was just the end of their world as they knew it. And Thor had sons in the sagas that everyone knew was prophesied to survive the end times and restart the world. And that itself is not just significant to Norse mythology either. There are different examples everywhere, but they understood this natural cycle that we have as humans. So, not just with nature in your own life and the seasons, but in the very long term, the very far out from where they were through their oral histories passed down to them, they understood that they kept going to improve upon humanity, that it wasn't just about them, it wasn't about their singular life. They would go through suffering. I think if anyone gets anything out of this at all, outside of if you're really to a point where you want to end your life and you feel like you've tried all the SSRIs, and I did when I was in the Marine Corps, they put me on certain things that didn't help at all. And if you feel like you're at your wits' end and you want to really reset your brain and give yourself an actual shot at this life, I would recommend doing psychedelics in a safe set and setting where you're not worried about getting caught by cops or anything like that. I'm not advocating for illegal activity. However, I am advocating for you have to put in the work to get the healing. It's not pretty. Everyone on Instagram talks about this. Everyone wants to talk about healing and use the word healing and I'm spiritual and blah, blah. Are you actually walking your spiritual path in your everyday life? I have fallen off slightly as far as meditation goes. I need to be better about that. I need to get back to where I'm meal prepping again because these are things that help me stay consistent with my goals and mentally correct, if you will. Why I haven't is because of working as much as I have. It's not very easy to, and that's honestly just an excuse. It is easy to wake up and get out of bed and do something for myself. It's that I don't want to do it because I would rather just stay in my warm bed and sleep. But I wasn't born and made to sleep and not do anything with my life. So my challenge recently is getting up on time. When I say I'm going to get up, and stop hitting the snooze button and being like, oh, I'll just work out after work or whatever, and then actually being consistent about meal prepping. And that's just me being vulnerable on your podcast about, yes, I may have been shown those things that, yeah, I need to do that for me. But I'm not always perfect. I do go through ebb and flow just like everybody else because I am a part of nature and nature ebbs and flows as well. So I have to be willing to accept those times when they come. This has been one of those times. I also had a back injury last year and then a car crash like 20 something days after that, and I was out of the gym for a while. I wasn't able to be in the gym. So, balancing the mentality and getting back on track and creating that consistency and that momentum has taken some time, but I'm finally getting there. And on December 2nd, it will be my 1 year anniversary to that back injury. And I started the ceiling for 6 days. But I knew ultimately that it was up to me to get myself out of that position. And if I had never done mushrooms and created the perspectives that I had, or I wouldn't say created, developed and inherited the perspectives that I had gotten from those psychedelic experiences, that time would have been a lot harder for me and it would have taken me a lot longer to get back to healthy, to get back to pushing the same weight. I'm actually pushing more weight than I was then because I took healing so seriously and I did physical therapy and I did all the things that I knew I needed to do for my body in order to get there. And it took a lot of grit. It took a lot of forcing myself to go to the gym, a lot of forcing myself to eat and forcing myself to drink water and forcing myself to read books and stop watching TV because you're bored and all you can do is stare at something right now. And giving myself and my body the time to heal so that, again, this tool that is my body can interface properly so that my consciousness can do the things that it needs to do in this lifetime. I'm a very active person. I use my body for all three of the jobs that I have. And the only job that I won't use that for is the one that I'm getting or implementing, which is a 1099. So I really have to be on top of it now. And I got to implement those things that I know that I need to do for myself so that I can be efficient, so that I can run like a quote unquote well oiled machine to accomplish my goals in life, which my goals would be to provide an alternative education system that is based off of a mixture of Montessori teaching and Socratic teaching method, I don't think that a lot of kids are gaining any value or critical thought process or internal discernment skills with the current system that we have in place right now. And then the goal is that I'll be able to get that on the ground and running and start enough to where I can then segue into creating a better farming system, a better agriculture system for society. Because right now, the way that we're tilling the soil and kind of ruining the earth's ability to cover her own soil ruins the ability for the nutrients to be trapped into the soil. And long story short of all that is it's a cycle. We could be composting, we could be doing a lot of things, we could have systems that are set up that way so that we have it implemented into society. Initiative to do things like composting and recycling to keep the planet healthy. But also with the agricultural point of that is if I have the ability to collect compost and I can turn that into soil within a year's time or less, I can turn around and sell that soil to other farms and put that nutrient back into the soil. I can also try and buy up land, which again costs a lot of money, which is where this drive really comes from to have all these jobs. I've got to buy a bunch of land to be able to rotate crops and develop healthy land that is going to produce the produce that I want that has the high nutrient density that we used to have before kind of like the 60s and 70s. When I'm not going to go into the conspiratorial aspect of this, you do your own research. Whenever Monsanto kind of took over the FDA and GMO became this new cool thing, because at this, this is kind of the back end of the industrial revolutionary boom, if you will. The one thing that we didn't really care to figure out at first was how can we distribute food in mass more efficiently. And they didn't think about anything other than really the bottom dollar in that efficient aspect. When I think about efficient, I think about what is most optimal for all of the beings involved. We're not separate from this planet. It creates our ability to live. We are not separate from the trees. We are not separate from the bees. We need to find a way, and there are ways. We have found ways. We just don't, the ways that work the best for the highest nutrient density, the highest value that we can provide our bodies, that takes time. And time is the one resource that none of us have figured out how to give ourselves more of. Or it's not a monetary thing. You can't give and take with time. And with nature, you have to allow it the ability to do its thing, which takes time, without getting into all the semantics of it all. So if we were able to buy up pockets of land in each state that was dedicated toward agriculture for that state and rotate crops, and obviously there are certain ecosystems and areas where certain things grow better than other things, and that's all an easy thing to figure out with the right amount of information, with the right amount of logistics and infrastructure. We can figure that out and make it more affordable, which is the biggest problem for all of our country. And would I like to see these things be implemented on a global level? Absolutely. I think that if we were able to transform the way that we develop our groceries, the things that we purchase, if we make it closer to all of the grocery stores and we don't need to wrap it in plastic, which contributes to the waste on this planet. And there's a lot of benefit to reforming these things. The only issue with reforming these things is that there are already some serious old industry people still in play who are going to hate a lot of this. It will deplete their bottom dollar. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be an easy transition. And I may not see the fruits from the seeds of the trees that I plant in my lifetime populate at all. That's my point, is I want to start this. I want to create this movement to change these things. And I want to see actual change happen in my lifetime that I can pass down to whoever earns that, whether it's my kids, whether it's someone who earned that spot within the company, whether it's more than likely the people that I grew up with, my best friend Reagan, who is actually who connected us together to be able to even do this podcast, which has been, I think, a year in the making. But to be honest, we both went through some pretty tumultuous times. You had the things that you spoke about on one of your recent podcasts with your personal life, with the implosion of friends and I resonate with that because I went through that prior to moving to Arizona. And then I ended up getting kind of laid off. I had to recover from that. And again, had I not done mushrooms, that would have been a very hard process for me, a very hard process for me. But at that point, I had the coping skills that I needed to interface properly with the world around me and be effective still. And I got a part time job, and then I got a full time job, and now I got another part time job. And I'm out of debt from that time where I was laid off already. That took less than 6 months. I credit mushrooms to giving me the mental strength, the mental plasticity to be able to understand ebb and flow, to be able to understand how to regulate my emotions, how to even learn to or begin to look with the right eyes and the ability to see where I was detrimenting my own life. Because 9 times out of 10, it was me. And if you talk to anybody who's gone down a similar spiritual path and taken psychedelics without anything else in their system, I should have touched on this earlier. When I did psychedelics for the first time, I didn't have alcohol in my system for about a week at that point. I didn't have any weed. I didn't have anything else. It was just that. And if you're going to do a hero's dose, I'm telling you, this is my recommendation. Don't consume nicotine, don't consume alcohol, don't consume weed for at least a week because the chemicals that you already have in your body are going to react with your brain's reaction that you will have from those psychedelics, whether it's psilocybin or ayahuasca or DMT. What's already in your body is going to have a chemical reaction with that as well. So if you have something like alcohol, which is a depressant, you're probably not going to have the greatest trip. And most people who I meet who are like, oh, I had a horrible trip, 9 times out of 10, they're on something else. And it's usually alcohol. So creating the set and setting isn't just your external environment, it's your internal environment, kind of a heavy theme that I've had this entire time. But if you choose to go through this path, you will run into many people who say that this is what gave me the ability to be introspective at the level that I'm introspective at. Because everyone can sit there and be like, yeah, well, this is my toxic trait. Is it? What's really going on in there? What aren't you facing? What aren't you trying to tackle? Because really, you're not hurting anybody else by avoiding this issue at all. At all. The only person you're detrimenting is yourself. When you refuse to try to heal whatever's going on with you, at that point, you are your own abuser. I'm not saying that you're your own abuser for not doing mushrooms at all. I'm just saying that I think everyone deserves to go through their own healing process, whatever level of trauma they do or don't have. You deserve your own effort, which was the affirmation that I should have started with at the beginning. And the affirmation that I recommend people use, whether it's in the morning or on your morning drive or when you're in the safest space, to say this out loud: I am worth my own efforts. You put effort into everyone and everything around you. That's the nature of this existence. No one here is going to escape that. Just no one here is going to escape suffering on some level. But no matter what, if you have all this effort, this energy to put into the world, and you're not putting it into yourself in any way, you're going to start going down a path that leads you towards depression and destruction for your own, whatever you have going on in life, your goals, your mentality. If you don't have the ability to be introspective and the willingness to put effort into yourself to develop better skills, coping, life, love, romance, whatever it is, if you don't have the desire to put in the work for yourself, you're not going to get what you want. We live in an age where we can get something instantaneously delivered to us. We can just go to the store and buy the thing we want. We don't have to wait. Instant gratification, I would say, is the true pandemic of our times since the 2000s, since really Amazon's biggest boom. We have everything at our fingertips, and it's both wonderful and horrible. But the one thing that didn't develop, that isn't going to evolve that way or that fast in that way, is your own spiritual growth, your own spiritual revolution. You have to be willing to do the work, and that takes time and consistent effort. and you're worth that. Every single person on this planet is worth their own effort, and your own effort is the way that you love yourself. Everyone talks about treating myself to ice cream today because I had a bad day. Is that in line with your goals? And if it's not, are you really treating yourself or are you hurting yourself? You have this moment of, oh, this tastes great, this 30 seconds of this thing in your mouth, whether it's ice cream or cookies or whatever. And don't get me wrong, I've had plenty of those this season alone. But my point here is that if it's not in line with your goals and you're doing it to yourself and you don't have the willingness to be like, hey, I'm doing this to myself, you're going to have a really hard time achieving what you want to achieve.
I feel like you need to have a podcast of your own. Like, you're so insightful. And I feel like I could constantly, and my audience as well, can constantly learn from you. So I really appreciate you coming on and educating us. I would love to have you back on to talk about other things because I feel like you have so much to offer and to teach. And yeah, I'm really excited I'm on board with your goal. I will support you in any way and let us know how we can support. Where can people find you to get in touch? And if they want to learn more, how can they get in touch with you?
So right now, I don't really have a business page or anything. I'm really just in the accumulation phase of getting the financial gain that I need to be able to even pursue these in the way that I want to. Right now, I'm just kind of creating community and creating awareness around these issues to kind of see, hey, who can I bring into this later in life? And when I have all the tools that I need, who wants to be a part of it and who wants to start this journey. And really the goal with this podcast was just to kind of plant seeds into other people's minds, whether it's about the healing, whether it's about agriculture, whether it's about the education. Really, a lot of people lack purpose. And my whole point, I should have said this at the beginning, sorry. The whole point of me talking about magic mushrooms is because it actually led me to be able to be introspective, to know what it was that would benefit me the most in life, whether it was my own actions and then my goals. I didn't have any goals when I got out of the Marine Corps. My entire identity was wrapped up in that. And I really thought that was the end of my life. So if you're struggling with meaning and purpose and generally don't view this life as worth living, I do recommend that you try a psychedelic in a safe place, whether it's magic mushrooms or ayahuasca or DMT or whatever you can kind of get your hands on. They all have different purposes though, so look into them on your own. I'll plant seeds, but I won't spoon feed you. That's my whole purpose, is to plant seeds and hopefully help other people realize the value in starting this journey on their own. And you don't have to come to the same conclusions as me at all on what you want to do and what you would like to implement in society, the things that you would like to see change. That's why it's your purpose, it's your own. That's your journey to find out. And the one thing that I also left out as far as like my spiritual beliefs go is whether you call it God, source, creator, universe, I view my intuition and my connection with it, my intuition, as God moving through me. In Christian speak, right? In that vernacular, we would be told God moves in mysterious ways. I firmly believe that God or creator, I call it source or universe, moves through me through my intuition because I am a fractal of that being who was incarnated into this realm to make certain things happen. Whether I understand what's happening at the moment in time that it's happening or not, doesn't mean that I'm not living up to my purpose and what I'm here to do. And it's all a part of your journey, but you have to be able to be willing to find out where it's going to lead you and to take those reins and make sure you get there. And I view psychedelics as one of the best tools to make you willing and able to really grab onto those reins and keep control of them. If you want to get into contact with me, I am on Instagram at Livesay. It's a play on my last name. My name is Bryston Livesay. You can add me on Facebook. I don't typically add people I don't know, but after this podcast goes online, I'll be more cognizant of that. So again, that's Livesay, Liftsay on Instagram. You can find me there. I don't really have a Twitter presence. Work on
No,
that.
we don't either.
Okay, cool. Yeah, honestly, I do see social media as a tool to connect and to share values and messages and help other people create new perspectives. But I also do see the doom scrolling and the microwave memes, and I have to limit my access to that because I'm not immune to that. I am just as human as the rest of
Mhm.
you, and I will fall into those bad habits if I feed them enough. So I try not to. So for now, I encourage to get a hold of me on Instagram if that's what your goal is.
Awesome. Heck
And
yeah. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. Oh my gosh, sorry, my AirPod. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll
thank
be in
you.
touch again soon. Thank you guys so much for giving this episode a listen. I hope you learned a lot from Bryston, and I look forward to having him on again for future podcast episodes. Don't forget to like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you, and I will catch you guys in our next episode. Thank you so much. Okay, love you. Bye.